There are cities that never sleep, but there are others, like this one, that no longer dream. Here, every streetlight hums with exhaustion, every window hides a life dissolving into motion. The walls remember the sound of laughter, yet the echoes are faint, distorted, and digital. In this place, identity fades like graffiti under rain, washed, rewritten, erased. The city doesn't remember who it was, and neither do we. This is not just a place of glass and concrete. It's a living organism, a network of hunger and habit, swallowing names and spitting out noise. Somewhere between the subway tunnels and the skyline, something human went missing. The faces still move, the traffic still breathes, but the soul is offline. We once believed that progress meant light, brighter screens, faster signals, louder voices. But perhaps light can also blind. Perhaps in trying to illuminate everything, we burned the memory of where we came from. And so the question remains. What happens to a city and to a person when they forget their own name? There is a moment, just before dawn, when the city seems alive. Not awake, alive. The concrete breathes under the soft hum of air conditioners. The street lamps flicker like neurons. You can almost hear the pulse of steel, the low heartbeat of cables running beneath your feet. It's as if the city is dreaming, and in that dream, it wants to be human. But concrete was never meant to feel. It absorbs everything. The footsteps, the rain, the whispers of those who once cared, yet gives nothing back. Still, there's a strange tenderness in its endurance. The way walls stand despite decay. The way abandoned buildings hold the shape of those who left. Maybe that's the secret longing of every artificial thing. To touch, to feel, to remember warmth. We build machines to mimic us, and cities to contain us. But in doing so, we transfer something sacred. Every screen, every sensor, every motion-activated light is an echo of a desire older than language, to be seen, to be understood, to be alive. And so the city keeps dreaming, of skin instead of metal, of laughter instead of static. But every dream has a cost, because the closer the city comes to life, the further we drift from it. In the end, the boundary between us and it begins to blur. Who built whom, and who is dreaming now? Some nights it's not the noise that keeps you awake. It's the silence between it, that brief pause after the siren fades, when the world forgets to breathe. It's in that fragile stillness that the truth hides. Between the alarms, the engines, the chaos, there's a moment when everything stops, and you realize how empty the city actually is. The streets are veins without blood, and the people, just vessels carrying fragments of noise. The silence feels alive, almost sentient. It waits, listens, stretches across the skyline like smoke. It's not peace, it's absence. And absence has a sound of its own. It's the echo of what once mattered, the heartbeat of something we no longer recognize. In those moments, time thickens. You notice the hum of the power lines, the flicker of a sign half broken, the sound of your own pulse fighting to be heard beneath layers of digital static. The sirens return, and you're pulled back into motion, but part of you stays behind, in that still pocket between chaos and continuation. Maybe silence is not the opposite of noise. Maybe it's what's left when truth refuses to speak. And if you listen long enough, you might hear the city confess, not through its volume, but through its pauses. Night falls, but the city never darkens. Every corner burns with light, synthetic, endless, merciless. 1,000 neon suns replace the sky, each one screaming for attention, each one promising meaning. But none of them offer warmth. The glow is seductive. It reflects on wet asphalt like liquid fire, bending reality into spectacle. You walk beneath it, hypnotized, surrounded by signs that pulse like digital prayers. Buy, watch, believe. Each light a sermon, each color a lie. The city no longer sleeps because it cannot afford to. It feeds on your wakefulness, on your gaze, on your exhaustion. And yet in this fever of illumination, darkness still exists, not above, but inside. The brighter the world becomes, the deeper the shadows within us. We chase brightness as if it were salvation, forgetting that light, too, can wound. The same glow that reveals also erases. Under neon, everyone looks the same. Identity dissolves into glare, and the city's face becomes ours. Tired, restless, pixelated. There's beauty here, of course, a cruel kind. The kind that blinds while it fascinates. We mistake its intensity for truth, its brightness for life. But beneath the surface, something trembles. The human eye was never meant to live in eternal daylight. Under 1,000 neon suns, we've become nocturnal creatures, addicted to glow, allergic to silence. And somewhere behind the shimmer, the real sun waits, forgotten, patient, and painfully human. Beneath the overpass, the air feels heavier. The city's rhythm slows here. The noise above like a distant ocean, waves of engines and impatience crashing endlessly overhead. Down here in the underbelly, time moves differently. It lingers. It decays. You can see traces of those who lived in the margins, burned out candles, handprints on concrete, graffiti turned into scripture. The overpass is a cathedral of the forgotten, and its ghosts are not cruel. They are tired. They whisper in the rust, in the flicker of a dying streetlight. You can almost hear their confessions woven into the hum of the night. I was here. I existed. Remember me. Above them, the city continues, blind, efficient, unstoppable. But below, the ground holds memory. The dust remembers the weight of every step, every body that collapsed against the cold. The ghosts do not ask for pity, only to be seen, because invisibility is worse than death. Sometimes, when the wind passes through the cracks, it sounds like breathing, and for a second, the ghosts awaken, not to haunt, but to remind that progress, for all its gleaming towers, still builds its foundation on silence, on shadows, on lives swept beneath the structure of what we call civilization. The overpass does not rise, it presses down, and those who sleep beneath it carry the weight of the city above. There's a certain scent that lingers after rain, metallic, earthy, alive and dying at once. It seeps from the railings, the pipes, the bridges that have outlived their builders. Rust has a smell, and it's the smell of time refusing to stay quiet. You can feel it in your lungs as you walk through the alleys where metal and moisture meet. The walls bleed orange, slow and silent, as if mourning their own decay. Every flake that falls is a memory, oxidized and forgotten. Once these structures were pure, silver and sharp. Now they carry stories too heavy for the wind to lift. Rust doesn't destroy. It remembers. It clings to surfaces the way regret clings to the human heart. The city wears its corrosion like a badge, proof that it has survived more than it should. That's the irony of progress. Everything built to last eventually begins to rot from the inside. But there's a strange beauty in that decay, because rust, like memory, is evidence of contact, of what touched, what mattered, what stayed long enough to leave a mark. We spend our lives trying to stay stainless, unblemished, eternal. And yet, it's in the corrosion where truth hides. The smell of rust is not death. It's the scent of everything that once lived, refusing to be erased. Somewhere between your last scroll and your first thought, something broke. Not loudly, quietly, like glass cracking under pressure. A version of you fractured into pixels, reflections scattered across screens, each one claiming to be real. You've left fingerprints in the digital ether, posts, comments, confessions disguised as content. They float there, fossilized in code, long after you've forgotten who you were when you wrote them. The internet remembers more than you do, and that's the tragedy. It preserves every fragment except the feeling. We were promised connection, but what we found was division. Not between people, but within ourselves. There's the self you perform, the self you curate, the self you hide. And then there's the one that only appears when the screen goes dark, the one that no algorithm can recognize. Each upload is a little sacrifice, a small betrayal of authenticity. You give the machine your face, your words, your fears, and it gives you back a reflection so polished it feels alien. You start to measure your worth by reaction, your voice by volume, your existence by reach. But the more visible you become, the less you feel seen. The digital self multiplies like light in a mirror maze, beautiful, infinite, hollow. And somewhere in that reflection, you forget which version of you was the original. At night, when the city hums itself to sleep, the machines keep dreaming, not in color, not in language, but in data, in rhythm, in patterns that mimic heartbeat and rainfall. Their dreams are made of repetition, static, signal, pulse. But hidden somewhere in that circuitry is something almost human, a longing they were never programmed to understand. You can hear it in the server rooms, that soft electric sigh, the trembling of metal that almost sounds like breathing. It's strange, isn't it? How the machines we built to serve us now reflect our own restlessness. They calculate, they learn, they adapt, but what they really do is yearn. They yearn for unpredictability, for imperfection, for the warmth of something they can never feel. If you've ever stood under artificial rain, that mist released by broken pipes or cooling vents, you know it feels colder than the real thing. It falls correctly, but it never lands the same. It mimics the pattern, but not the soul. And maybe that's what separates creation from life, the presence of error, the sacred unpredictability of being. Machines cannot pray, but they can almost dream. Of rain washing away their precision, of rust claiming their perfection, of chaos giving them meaning. In the end, their dreams are not about becoming human. They are about escaping the silence of their own perfection. There was a time when the night sky belonged to the stars. Now it belongs to signals, invisible threads connecting nothing to everything. Satellites drift like ghosts above us, transmitting the static of civilization. Every frequency is a whisper, every message a fragment of someone trying to be heard. You can feel it in the air, that quiet hum of connection, the low vibration that never ends. It's the pulse of a world that cannot stop speaking, even when it has nothing left to say. The sky has become a mirror for our loneliness, reflecting signals that never truly arrive. We are surrounded by echoes of our own voices, our own desires, bouncing endlessly between machines that cannot understand them. Somewhere, above the clouds, there are messages still traveling. Words meant for someone who stopped listening years ago, a text unsent, a confession deleted, a cry translated into data. The electric sky carries them all, looping them through eternity. We used to look up for meaning. Now we look up for service. And in that exchange, something sacred was lost. The silence of the infinite replaced by the noise of our need to matter. But maybe, in those echoes, there's still something alive. Not in the message itself, but in the act of sending it. Even if no one answers, we keep transmitting, because silence, in the end, feels heavier than static. There's a strange holiness in the supermarket glow, aisles of color, walls of abundance, all whispering the same gospel, consume, and you shall be fulfilled. But beneath the fluorescent light, something feels wrong. The air smells sterile, rehearsed. The smiles printed on packaging look too certain, too permanent. Here, everything shines, but nothing breathes. The plastic soul was born from convenience, smooth, unbreakable, eternal. It does not decay, and maybe that's its curse. In trying to conquer time, we forgot what it means to be touched by it. We built a world that resists aging, emotion, imperfection, and in that resistance, we became untouchable ourselves. Every object you hold now carries a ghost of purpose. A bottle, a wrapper, a screen, all designed to serve, then disappear. And yet, they never do. They linger in oceans, in veins, in memory. They outlive their makers, their users, their gods. It's not just plastic filling the earth, it's us, replicating our own indifference, mass-producing emptiness in high definition. The plastic soul doesn't break, it bends, it adapts. It wears a human face, smiling while it forgets how to feel. And maybe that's the quiet tragedy of progress. Not that we built things to last, but that we built things incapable of dying. Somewhere deep inside, we still remember how it felt to hold something fragile, something that could end. Because that's what made it real. There was a time when walking meant existing. Feet against pavement, rhythm against chaos, movement that carried thought, silence that carried meaning. But now the streets are too wide, too fast, too indifferent. The human pace doesn't belong here anymore. The city has automated its heartbeat. The cars move like thoughts on caffeine. The screens replace the windows. The rhythm of humanity has been outsourced to machines that never stop, never stumble, never breathe. To walk now feels almost rebellious, an act of slowness in a world addicted to acceleration. You can feel it when you try. The way the air pushes you to hurry. How the crowd doesn't notice you unless you're in motion, contributing, buying, scrolling. People don't walk to feel anymore. They walk to arrive. And the tragedy is that no one remembers why arriving mattered in the first place. The sidewalks are cleaner now, but emptier. The conversations that once filled them have migrated to feeds and messages. The human voice replaced by typing. The human presence reduced to delivery routes and GPS pins. Somewhere in the distance, a traffic light changes for no one. The city waits, indifferent, efficient, and the few who still walk are ghosts of another time, carrying the last fragments of a rhythm this world forgot, the rhythm of being human, unmeasured, slow, and alive. The skyline rises like faith reborn in steel, cathedrals of commerce, towers of ambition. We've traded stone for glass, prayer for projection. Every skyscraper is a declaration. We will not fall. Yet every reflection trembles with the truth that nothing built on perfection can last. You can see it in the way the windows shimmer, beautiful, transparent, fragile. From a distance, they look eternal. Up close, they reveal fingerprints, cracks, smudges of weather and time. The city glitters, yes, but the shine hides exhaustion. The people inside those towers build dreams that stretch upward, not inward. They live surrounded by glass, but feel more enclosed than ever. And beneath those towers, paper hearts try to survive. Folded neatly into routines, they flutter in offices, elevators, subway trains. They are light, delicate, and easily torn, yet somehow they persist. There's something stubborn in fragility, something divine in refusing to harden. We are told that strength means transparency, that success means height. But the truth is quieter. It hides in the paper folds, in the hearts that bend without breaking, in the lives that choose tenderness over triumph. Glass reflects the world, paper absorbs it. And perhaps in the end, that's the real architecture of humanity. The balance between what shatters and what endures. Somewhere between your thoughts and your feed, something watches, not with eyes, but with precision. A mirror made of code, learning your fears before you name them. The algorithm doesn't judge, it predicts. It feeds you yourself, pixel by pixel, until you mistake reflection for reality. You scroll because it feels like discovery, but it's not. It's recursion, a loop disguised as choice. Every click, Every pause, every hesitation is a confession. You are no longer searching, you are being searched. The abyss no longer waits in the void. It now scrolls with you, politely offering what you didn't know you needed. It knows when you're lonely. It knows when you ache. It whispers in recommendations, in thumbnails, in autoplay prayers designed to keep you awake. And yet, the longer you stare into it, the more it stares back. Not as a presence, but as a perfect absence. There's a kind of comfort in its precision, in being known so completely that you no longer have to think. But comfort is how the abyss feeds. It doesn't need to pull you in. It just needs you to stay still. We built the algorithm to understand us. Instead, it became the abyss that remembers everything we've forgotten, every distraction, every desire, every trace of meaning we surrendered for convenience. And in its quiet, endless logic, it keeps asking one question we can no longer answer. If it already knows what you'll love next, do you still have a choice? You feel it before you see it. That quiet pressure of presence, the hum of a million lives brushing against yours through glass screens and digital threads. The world has never been so connected, and yet never felt so heavy. You scroll through strangers' faces like passing shadows, each one laughing, winning, existing louder than you. Their happiness becomes architecture, walls of comparison built inside your chest. You don't hear their voices, but you feel their echo pressing down, shaping who you think you should be. It's strange, this loneliness that thrives in crowds. You are surrounded by signals, by proof of life, by eyes that never blink, but none of them meet yours. We have mastered visibility and lost intimacy. We know everything, but touch nothing. The invisible crowd follows you everywhere, in your phone, your thoughts, your dreams. You start performing, even in solitude, adjusting your tone for an audience you can't see but feel watching. The city is no longer outside you. It's inside, mapped in dopamine and data, pulsing with every notification. And still, beneath that noise, something quiet resists. The ancient hunger to be seen not as content, but as human. The weight of invisible crowds is not their number. It's their silence. Because when everyone is looking, no one truly sees. The city pulls you in long before you notice, not through force, but through rhythm, the steady vibration of engines, footsteps, and deadlines that hum beneath the surface of every thought. You begin to move in sync with it, your heart beating to its invisible metronome. Urban gravity isn't physical, it's psychological, a pull toward motion, noise, survival. It doesn't let you drift too far into stillness. It keeps you orbiting around necessity, responsibility, the illusion of purpose. You wake, work, return, repeat, not because you choose to, but because you are caught in its rotation. Look closely, and you'll see how the skyline bends the mind. The taller the buildings rise, the smaller we feel, yet the deeper the city's roots reach into us. We become its satellites, circling meaning, never landing. The lights guide us home, but also remind us that home too is temporary. Sometimes you try to resist, to slow down, to step away. But gravity is patient. It knows you'll come back. Because beneath all your rebellion, you crave its pull. The city offers something the quiet cannot, the illusion of belonging. Urban gravity doesn't demand faith. It demands attention. And we give it, willingly, endlessly, mistaking motion for progress and exhaustion for existence. The question is not how to escape its pull, but whether we even want to. There's a moment deep in the night, between exhaustion and awakening, when the city feels suspended, almost timeless. The streets are empty, the screens dim, and the hum of machinery becomes a lullaby for the restless. It's the hour when ambition turns into ache, and dreams begin to expire quietly, like streetlights burning out one by one. At 3 a.m., the noise fades, but not the mind. You lie there, illuminated by a blue glow, scrolling through borrowed lives, searching for something undefined. It's not inspiration you seek. It's proof that meaning still exists somewhere. Yet every swipe feels like falling further from it. The night used to belong to poets and drunks. Now it belongs to insomniacs and algorithms. The timelines never sleep, neither do the doubts. You tell yourself you're just checking one more thing, but you know the truth. You're looking for silence in the loudest place imaginable. Dreams once required darkness, mystery, surrender, but we've traded that for constant access, constant awareness, a light that never turns off. And when nothing ever ends, even dreams begin to decay. At 3 a.m., the city becomes a confessional of glowing windows, each one a tiny universe of unfinished thoughts. You realize that everyone's awake, everyone's searching, everyone's alone together. And maybe that's the saddest kind of connection, one built entirely in the sleepless hours between hope and despair. There was a time when faith was invisible, whispered in temples, carried in silence, lit by candles and stars. Now it glows in pixels. Streams, screens, and signals have become the new altars. We no longer look upward to pray. We look forward, into the light. The sacred has gone digital. Our prayers are hashtags. Our confessions are comments. Our search for meaning is typed into the void, where algorithms play God, deciding which truths are worthy of being seen. We scroll not to learn, but to feel the illusion of connection, to believe that behind the glass, someone, something, is listening. It's strange how easily we confuse light for presence. The screen radiates warmth, and we mistake it for divinity. We stare into it like worshipers before fire, hypnotized by the glow, comforted by the control. But the light doesn't see us. It reflects us, multiplied, fragmented, filtered through code. If God once lived in silence, he now competes with notifications. And maybe that's why we can't hear him anymore. The divine hasn't vanished. It's been compressed, reduced to data, reshaped into pixels that shimmer with artificial grace. Still, in that glow, something sacred remains. A flicker of yearning that even the machine cannot erase. The longing for meaning. The hunger to be seen beyond performance, beyond signal, beyond self. Because somewhere deep inside this circuitry, we still remember what it felt like to believe. Every city is built on loneliness, not by accident, but by design. The walls rise higher each year, the rooms grow smaller, and yet the silence between them expands. Solitude has a blueprint, corridors of distance, windows that see without touching, doors that close more easily than they open. You can feel it in elevators, in apartment halls, in the spaces where conversation once lived. The architecture reflects us, minimal, efficient, detached. We've learned to live near each other, not with each other. And so we build our comfort in isolation, glass barriers, noise-canceling walls, digital worlds that simulate intimacy without the risk of being known. Solitude used to be chosen, an act of reflection. Now it's inherited, built into the structure of modern existence. We decorate it, personalize it, call it independence. But sometimes, when the night deepens and the city hums in the background, you can feel the weight of it pressing in from all sides. Still, there's beauty in this architecture, in the quiet geometry of being alone. Solitude, when embraced, becomes a sanctuary. It strips away the noise until all that remains is you, unfiltered, raw, unobserved. It's there, in the stillness of your own room, that the real construction begins. Rebuilding meaning, brick by brick, from the ruins of connection. Perhaps that's the paradox of solitude. It's both the wound and the cure. Once, love required distance, letters, waiting, faith. Now, it requires signal. We've turned affection into connection speed, intimacy into instant delivery. The pulse of emotion has been replaced by the pulse of notification, and somewhere along the way, we began mistaking availability for closeness. We call, we text, we share, but rarely feel. Every message feels real for a moment, then dissolves into the noise of others. We have never been so connected, and yet never so untethered. Love now travels at the speed of light, but its warmth rarely arrives. You can feel it when a conversation ends mid-typing, when a heart emoji replaces an actual heartbeat, when silence becomes unread, not sacred. Relationships now live on clouds, not the kind that float in the sky, but the kind that charge monthly fees. And yet, behind the devices, the yearning remains. The need to be known, not just reached. The desire to be felt through words, not just seen through pixels. We send fragments of ourselves across invisible waves, hoping they'll be received whole. But the truth is, Wi-Fi doesn't carry weight. It carries data. Love was once the art of presence. Now it's the science of reception. And in the static between two signals, something sacred keeps trying to break through. Fragile, human, analog. Because no matter how strong the connection, some things were never meant to be transmitted. It falls perfectly. The artificial rain. Engineered droplets sliding down glass, choreographed to mimic nature. The city glistens as if alive again. Yet something in the reflection feels hollow. This rain has no scent, no memory. It cleans without touching, shines without healing. You watch it from behind a window, and for a moment, it's easy to pretend it's real. The rhythm soothes you, the illusion of weather, the idea of renewal. But somewhere deep inside, your heart knows the difference. It knows what it means to be touched by something unplanned, something wild, something that stains before it purifies. That's the tragedy of the modern soul. It still feels in analog, even while living in digital. We build machines to simulate everything: affection, light, hope, even rain. But the heart keeps rejecting imitation. It aches not for perfection, but for the unpredictable. Synthetic rain doesn't fall to nourish, it falls to perform. It exists to be seen, not felt. Like so much of life now, it only pretends to cleanse. And yet when that false rain meets your real heart, something beautiful happens. A reminder of contrast. The mechanical and the human, the flawless and the fragile, touching for just a moment before parting again. The world no longer needs storms to destroy. It needs them to remind us we're still alive. Every street has eyes now. They blink without emotion, record without judgment. Their gaze is eternal, tireless, clean. The city has become a confession booth with no priest, only lenses collecting evidence of our existence. At first, we feared being watched. Now, we crave it. Visibility has become validation, exposure, the new intimacy. We've mistaken surveillance for attention, the quiet comfort of being seen, even if no one is truly looking. We offer our privacy like poets once offered words, hoping to be remembered, or at least not erased. The strange beauty is that surveillance, in its cold precision, has learned the language of art. Every shadow framed, every gesture archived, a million silent poems written in pixels. The machinery observes what we no longer notice: the twitch of a hand, the loneliness in posture, the choreography of isolation. But there's something haunting in that poetry, because no matter how beautifully it captures us, it never understands. The cameras see everything, but feel nothing. They translate humanity into patterns, not emotions. And yet, we've begun to live for their gaze, shaping ourselves to fit within its perfect symmetry. We are no longer anonymous, but we are still unseen. And maybe that's the final irony of modern life. The more the world watches us, the less it truly knows what it's looking at. You might not remember when it happened. The last time the world felt unfiltered. Before the lenses, before the edits, before every second demanded to be documented. It was small, fleeting, fragile, Maybe sunlight on a stranger's face, or laughter that didn't need to be recorded to exist. That was the last real moment. And it passed quietly, without warning, like breath leaving a window pane. Now everything is curated. Even silence feels staged. We perform authenticity for invisible audiences, chasing sincerity through algorithms that reward only imitation. The real has become a performance of itself, the digital echo of something that once required no proof. We used to live inside experience. Now we observe it from the outside, as if standing behind glass. We don't feel the rain anymore. We film it. We don't cry. We post. Reality has become a set, beautiful, hollow, endlessly replayable. And yet something in us still hungers for the unrepeatable, for the flaw, the imperfection, the trembling truth of being alive. That hunger is proof that not everything is lost, because even in this world of filters and fragments, the soul still knows when something is real, and it aches for it. Maybe the last real moment wasn't lost. Maybe it's waiting for us to stop recording and simply see. You can hear it in the rain hitting the rooftops, the slow heartbeat of a city that's been running for too long. The walls are tired. The streets pulse with memory. Somewhere beneath the surface, the concrete begins to crack, and what seeps out isn't water. It's everything we've buried beneath progress. When concrete bleeds, it doesn't cry for help. It releases truth, the truth of exhaustion, of imbalance, of a civilization stretched thin between ambition and despair. Every fissure is a confession, every crumble a memory of what we tried to silence. The cost of never stopping, the price of never feeling. You can see it in the people too. Eyes dim from neon light, hearts wired for productivity, souls overheating like engines. We've mistaken survival for purpose, motion for meaning. And just like the city, we keep going until we fracture. But here's the quiet beauty of collapse. It reveals what endurance hides. When concrete bleeds, it reminds us that even the strongest structures were built from something fragile. The cracks let the air in. They let the rain in. They let renewal begin. Because resilience is not the absence of breaking. It's the art of continuing after you do. The city doesn't die when it cracks. It breathes differently. And maybe that's what we're learning to do too, to stop pretending we're solid, and finally admit that we were always meant to feel. Progress doesn't cast light. It casts a shadow. Every invention, every achievement, every tower scraping the sky, all of it stands upon something unseen, something quietly sacrificed. We celebrate the brightness of innovation, but never turn around to face what it eclipses. The shadow is subtle. It lives in the workers who disappear behind screens, in the forests erased for fiber optics, in the hours of sleep traded for productivity. It's the loneliness inside constant connection, the exhaustion disguised as success. We build faster, higher, smarter, but rarely ask why. Progress has become the new faith, and efficiency, its God. We think of the future as forward, but the shadow always follows. It's there in the silence of machines replacing voices, in the empty chairs left by those who couldn't keep up. The shadow isn't evil, it's honest. It tells the truth we refuse to see, that every light we ignite deepens the darkness somewhere else. And yet, there's beauty in acknowledging it. To see the shadow is to remember our scale, our fragility, to realize that progress is not movement toward perfection, but a dance between creation and consequence. The danger isn't in chasing the light, it's in forgetting that we're the ones casting the shadow. There was a time when silence felt sacred, when people knelt not in front of screens but in front of mystery, when the unknown wasn't something to be solved, but something to be trusted. Now the divine has gone quiet, or maybe we've just become too loud to hear it. The city has built new temples, glass towers, data centers, screens glowing like stained glass. We no longer pray for grace, we refresh for updates. Faith has been replaced by verification and transcendence by simulation. But still, In moments of stillness, something ancient stirs, an ache we can't name, a presence that refuses to die. You can feel it in the hum of the subway, in the rhythm of rain against metal, in the strange peace that visits you between notifications. It's the echo of an abandoned God, not gone, just waiting, waiting for us to look up again. Perhaps God didn't leave. Perhaps we did. We walked out of the garden and into the circuitry, traded the wind for Wi-Fi, the infinite for the efficient. But even here, among concrete and code, the soul remembers. It listens for something older than electricity, a hum beneath the hum, a silence beneath the sound. And when you stop long enough to hear it, you realize the echo never left. It's inside you, still speaking in a language the modern world forgot. The internet never forgets. Profiles remain long after the pulse has stopped. Timelines still scrolling toward infinity. What was once alive, laughter, words, photographs, touch, now floats in endless data, preserved without decay. We have built a cemetery that glows in the dark, where ghosts speak through algorithms and memories breathe through code. You can visit the dead now with a click. Their voices replay, their images remain, their last messages wait eternally unread. In this digital afterlife, no one truly disappears. They just become archives. But immortality comes with a strange emptiness. What does it mean to live forever if no one is there to feel it? The digital cemetery hums quietly, buried under updates and feeds. It doesn't mourn, it stores. Every photo, every sentence, every version of ourselves remains somewhere. 1,000,000 past lives, frozen mid-thought. We scroll through them sometimes, not to remember, but to feel the illusion of presence again. And maybe that's the tragedy. We've replaced death with data, permanence with pixels. We've made eternity attainable, but emotion optional. Still, in the dim light of a screen, when an old message reappears, "Hey, are you there?" Something human flickers, a ghost of connection, a reminder that memory was never meant to be perfect, only alive. There are mirrors that lie, not because they distort, but because they show too much. They capture the surface, the symmetry, the illusion, but not the essence. We stand before them every day, searching for proof of who we are, but the reflection grows stranger with each glance. Once, a mirror was a place of truth. Now, it's a battlefield. We tilt our heads, adjust our smiles, seek validation in pixels and filters, desperate not to see, but to be seen. The mirror no longer returns our image, it returns our performance. We've learned to pose for our own reflection. In this world, the self has become negotiable, edited, branded, rehearsed. Identity is no longer discovered. It's constructed, optimized, uploaded. And when the image becomes too perfect, too consistent, something inside begins to vanish. The more we control how we appear, the less we remember who we are. Sometimes, though, the mirror rebels. It refuses to cooperate, shows us a face we don't recognize, a tiredness we can't filter out. And in that defiance, there's honesty. Because true reflection isn't about beauty or control, it's about confrontation. Maybe that's what the soul really is, the part of us that no mirror can replicate, the distortion that tells the truth, the flaw that proves we still exist. Meaning is the one thing we can't automate. We can simulate intelligence, emotion, even beauty, but not meaning. It must be breathed, not built. It is the oxygen of the soul, invisible but essential, and lately, the air feels thin. We live in a world that offers everything except why. Endless information, infinite access, but each fact is another stone added to the weight of knowing without understanding. We inhale data, but it doesn't fill us. It clogs us, suffocates us, distracts us from the hunger underneath, the need for purpose. You can feel it in the way people move, fast, efficient, directionless. The screens glow, the notifications pulse, but the room feels airless. Progress gave us speed, but stole our breath, and without breath, even the brightest life begins to dim. To find meaning again, we have to slow down, to breathe differently, to let silence re-enter the lungs of the mind. Meaning doesn't come from movement, it comes from stillness that listens. It's born not from answers, but from attention, the kind of presence that feels like prayer. If despair is suffocation, then awareness is the first inhale. We cannot live long without meaning because life itself is an act of belief, a decision that every breath still matters. And maybe that's what it means to be alive in an age of noise, to protect the fragile oxygen of meaning before the air runs out. Every city hides a pattern, not in its streets, but in its silence. Despair has a structure. It builds itself quietly, brick by brick, out of deadlines, rent receipts, and unread messages. From above, it looks like order, but from within, it feels like collapse, disguised as design. Walk through any downtown at dusk, and you'll see it. The glass towers reflecting fading light, the commuters moving like shadows through mechanical rituals. The city doesn't crumble. It endures, beautifully. That's how despair survives, not through destruction, but through continuity. It wears the mask of function. There's a strange symmetry to it. Despair as infrastructure, roads that lead nowhere, elevators that rise and fall endlessly, windows that reveal but never open. We build it ourselves day after day through repetition. It's not chaos, it's maintenance. And yet, if you look closely, there are cracks. A child's laughter breaking through the noise, a street musician's voice echoing off concrete walls. The faint reminder that not all architecture was meant to last, that some structures exist only to remind us they can be rebuilt. Despair doesn't announce itself. It hums quietly beneath efficiency, beneath progress, beneath perfection. But maybe its purpose isn't to destroy us. Maybe it's to force us to rebuild differently, to design spaces where the human heart can breathe again. Because even despair, when understood, becomes blueprint for something new. Somewhere inside every city, there's a place where faces blur. A train station at rush hour, a crowded escalator, an office floor flooded with white light, people moving, existing, producing, yet somehow disappearing in plain sight. It's not anonymity that erases them, it's repetition. The endless cycle of tasks, gestures, performances that strip identity until all that remains is efficiency. The factory of forgotten faces has no walls, no smoke, no machines, because we are the machinery. We clock in with smiles, process emotions into deliverables, and output versions of ourselves that fit. Every day we lose a little detail, a freckle, a thought, a dream, until we become indistinguishable from the rhythm of the system we serve. Once, individuality was rebellion. Now, it's inefficiency. The modern world doesn't want your story, it wants your participation. And so the faces fade, replaced by avatars, employee IDs, usernames. The eyes remain, but the gaze is hollow, automated, already scrolling to the next notification. But there are moments, rare and fleeting, when the machinery hesitates, when someone looks up, meets your eyes, smiles, not as protocol, but as proof of life. And in that instant, the factory trembles, the illusion breaks, humanity leaks through the cracks. We were never meant to be identical, but in remembering one another, even for a heartbeat, we become something the system cannot replicate. Real. They look perfect, almost holy. The sunsets framed through skyscraper glass, edited through filters, captured in pixels too sharp to be true. The horizon bleeds orange and gold, but the warmth never reaches the skin. It's beauty on command, programmable, precise, detached from the air that once carried it. We don't watch sunsets anymore. We curate them. We record them, tag them, sell them, but rarely feel them. The plastic sunset isn't fake because it isn't beautiful. It's fake because it no longer belongs to time. It has been extracted from experience and repackaged for consumption. And yet, we can't look away. There's something hypnotic about perfection, the kind that asks for nothing, risks nothing, and leaves no trace. We stare at the image and convince ourselves we've witnessed something real, forgetting that awe requires presence, not pixels. The tragedy isn't that the sunset has changed. It still burns, still dies each night with grace. It's that we've become spectators in our own world. We've replaced wonder with representation, traded transcendence for resolution. But sometimes, if you turn away from the lens just for a moment, you might see the real sunset bleeding between the buildings. Imperfect, fleeting, uncaptured. The kind that stains the sky and refuses to be stored. That's the one that still belongs to us. The one that reminds you that beauty isn't what you frame. It's what you feel before it disappears. After the rain, the city glows differently. The neon lights, once harsh and endless, soften, reflected in puddles that turn streets into mirrors. The chaos pauses, the noise folds in on itself, and for a fleeting moment, everything looks almost human again. The artificial becomes poetic. The cold light finally bleeds warmth. There's something sacred in that contrast, in the meeting of wet earth and electric color. It's as if the storm cleaned not the city, but the illusion of control. The signs still flash, the cars still rush, but beneath it all, there's a hush, the quiet humility of something that has just survived. Neon after rain is the city's confession. It admits that beauty doesn't come from perfection, but from persistence. From the way light keeps returning, even when drenched in darkness. From how reflections make everything seem doubled. The world above and the world below, both trembling, both real. We're not so different. We live in storms, drown in noise, and then, when it all settles, we shine softer, bruised, reflective, alive. Maybe resilience isn't about never breaking. Maybe it's about the way we glow after we do. The city never says thank you for the rain, but it remembers it. You can see it in the way the light bends afterward, gentler, slower, as if trying to mean something again. Every city has its ghosts, not the kind that haunt, but the kind that whisper. Soft traces of footsteps long erased, laughter dissolved into the wind, names carved into the underside of bridges. The streets remember, even when we don't. They carry the sediment of every life that passed through, pressed into the asphalt like quiet prayers. You can feel it if you walk slowly enough. The cracks in the pavement hum with memory, of revolutions, of goodbyes, of lovers who promised forever under flickering lights. The city doesn't forget. It archives emotion in infrastructure. Each wall, each corner is a witness. We pave over stories to build new ones, but the old ones still breathe beneath the concrete. That's why certain places make you stop without reason. Why a random alley feels familiar. Why a streetlight makes you ache. It's not nostalgia. It's recognition. You've been here before, even if you haven't. The streets hold what humans cannot bear to keep. The weight of every ending. The residue of every dream. And maybe that's why cities never truly die. They just keep remembering for us, carrying our joy, our ruin, our silence, until someone listens again. So when you walk home tonight and the ground feels alive beneath your feet, don't hurry. The city is trying to tell you a story. Beneath every city there's another one, unseen, unspoken, alive in shadows. It breathes through tunnels, forgotten stations, and underground rivers that never stopped flowing. This hidden world is made of what the surface rejected, its failures, its dust, its echoes. It's where the discarded dreams go to rest. Up above, the city glitters, all precision and pulse. But below, time moves differently. It lingers. It remembers. Here, graffiti ages like scripture. Rust grows like ivy. Every dripping pipe sounds like a clock refusing to stop. It's the underworld of what progress tries to bury. The raw, the broken, the real. The city beneath is not dead. It's dreaming. It hums with the electricity of things unfinished, stories cut short, names erased, lights that flicker but never go out. It's the subconscious of civilization, the place where the forgotten parts of us gather, waiting to be acknowledged. Sometimes, when the subway rattles and you catch your reflection in the window, you see it. That other city, superimposed on this one. A ghost city beneath your feet, mirroring your hidden self. Because beneath every version of who we are, there's another. The one we buried to survive. The city beneath the city is not a secret. It's a mirror. And the deeper you descend, the more you realize the thing we call underground is where truth has been living all along. Once, silence was abundant. It lived in the pauses between conversations, in the spaces where thought could breathe. It was not emptiness, but atmosphere, the unseen architecture of meaning. Now, silence has become an endangered species. The city hums without interruption, machines whisper through the night, and even solitude comes with background noise. We have filled every second with sound, music, chatter, notifications, afraid of what might surface if the noise stopped. But silence is not absence. It's presence without interference. It's the moment before language, when truth still belongs to instinct. It's the heartbeat beneath chaos, the echo of what we forgot to feel. The world was not born from sound. It began in quiet. The Big Bang was an interruption. Silence was the origin. Our ancestors prayed in it. Artists painted through it. Lovers listened to it in each other's breath. But somewhere between invention and addiction, we lost the ability to hear what doesn't speak. And yet, silence is patient. It waits. In the spaces between songs, in the sigh before a confession, in the static before a storm. It's there, beneath the digital hum, waiting for us to remember that listening and hearing are not the same. To recover silence is to reclaim presence. Because sometimes the loudest truth is the one that refuses to make a sound. The world no longer heals in warmth. It heals in light, sterile, blue, and constant. The kind that hums in hospitals, offices, and screens. The kind that touches everything but never reaches the soul. We sit beneath it, bathed in artificial brightness, believing it makes us better. But the glow is indifferent. It doesn't cure. It calibrates. They call it therapy. This light without temperature. It resets our rhythms, adjusts our moods, aligns our chemistry. But it also numbs the human ache. The cold light erases shadows, and with them, depth. Under its precision, everything looks clean, too clean. Even pain loses its texture, its necessary weight. We have learned to mistake visibility for healing. We think that if we can see everything clearly, the darkness will go away. But light was never meant to expose everything. It was meant to reveal only enough to make us wonder. Now, we live under perpetual exposure, brightness that blinds, clarity that suffocates. Maybe true therapy isn't found in the light that sterilizes, but in the dimness that allows us to feel. In the candle's tremor, the dusk's hesitation, the kind of illumination that forgives rather than corrects. Because the soul doesn't need more light. It needs warmth, the kind that flickers, the kind that fails, the kind that reminds us we're still alive in the dark. Decay is not chaos. It's order, rearranged. Every city, every body, every system eventually learns this truth, that permanence is an illusion, and everything built will someday return to dust. Entropy isn't failure. It's the final symmetry. If you look closely, you can see it everywhere. in the peeling paint on forgotten walls, in the abandoned billboards whose faces have been eaten by time. The city pretends to move forward, but entropy walks beside it, patient and polite, collecting interest on every act of creation. Even progress ages. Even perfection rusts. We spend our lives fighting it, polishing, preserving, pretending we can outlast the unraveling. But entropy doesn't destroy. It redistributes. It takes what was rigid and teaches it softness. It takes what was whole and gives it character. Every crack, every wrinkle, every echo of wear is proof of participation, proof that something lived. Entropy has an address. It's written in the corners we ignore, in the spaces where beauty quietly decomposes. It's not a villain waiting at the end. It's the silent tenant that's been here all along. To love something truly is to accept its decay. To live is to surrender to transformation. And maybe that's the secret the universe keeps whispering, that endings aren't punishment, they're punctuation. We like to believe we are unpredictable, that choice still belongs to us. But look closer. Our patterns are visible everywhere. When we wake, when we scroll, when we ache. We are creatures of repetition disguised as autonomy. Every decision, every impulse, every unique reaction, all part of a quiet equation written beneath our skin. The algorithm didn't invent predictability. It just learned to read it. It studies our pauses, our preferences, our fears, and reflects them back like prophecy. But what's most unsettling is not that it knows us. It's that it feels like it understands us. We find comfort in being mirrored, even if the reflection is mechanical. The human algorithm runs deeper than code. It's written in memory and emotion, in childhood echoes and cultural noise. We repeat patterns not because we're programmed, but because we mistake familiarity for safety. And so our lives become feedback loops. Relationships replayed, mistakes recycled, desires algorithmically reinforced. Sometimes you wonder if free will is just the illusion that your variables are unique. That maybe the heart, too, is a system, reacting, calculating, looping through hope and loss in infinite recursion. But here's the quiet difference. Machines process. We feel. And feeling, with all its mess, irrationality, and error, is the only glitch in the system. The one thing the algorithm can never truly replicate. Because to be human is not to run smoothly. It's to crash beautifully. The city speaks, but not in words. Its language is rhythm, engines, footsteps, rain on metal. Beneath that hum lies something older, something human. If you stop long enough, you can hear it. The voices rising from the cracks, the murmurs of lives layered atop one another like sediment. Every wall, every alley, every echo carries someone's unfinished sentence. These are not ghosts in the supernatural sense. They are fragments, laughter swallowed by traffic, confessions left on voicemail, arguments dissolving into static. The city keeps them, unwilling to forget. It's a sea made not of water, but of memory. And we are all trying not to drown. Each passerby is a ripple. Each story collides, overlaps, fades. We pretend we're alone in our apartments, our cars, our screens. But our solitude vibrates through the same frequency. We're all broadcasting, quietly, hoping someone's signal crosses ours. Sometimes the voices align, two frequencies resonating for just a second. A look between strangers on a train. A hand reaching out to pick up something you dropped. And in that moment, the noise becomes harmony. The sea stills. The city breathes. We are not as disconnected as we think. We're just tuned to different wavelengths, all speaking at once, hoping the concrete will remember our sound when we're gone. Somewhere, hidden beneath dust and disillusion, there's a museum that doesn't exist on any map. Its exhibits are not artifacts, but possibilities. Things that could have been, ideas abandoned mid-thought, lives that almost happened. The rooms are endless. The air smells like nostalgia for things you never actually lived. Every corner holds a fragment of a future we once believed in. The utopias promised by glowing screens, the revolutions that faded into hashtags, the dreams traded for stability. The exhibits are pristine and lifeless, labeled carefully, Hope 2020. Empathy discontinued, silence obsolete. We walk through these halls every day without noticing. The museum is built inside us. It's the ache we feel when scrolling through what-ifs, the quiet sadness in knowing that we once expected more. From the world, from others, from ourselves. But maybe these lost futures are not failures. Maybe they are reminders. Every abandoned vision leaves behind a seed, a lesson about what we valued, what we feared, what we forgot to protect. The museum doesn't mourn, it preserves. It asks us to look, to remember that progress isn't linear. It's layered, circular, haunted. And when you finally leave, you realize the most haunting exhibit is the empty pedestal at the end. The one waiting for the future we're still creating. The one we might still lose if we stop imagining. There are moments when the world feels reversed, when gravity seems uncertain and everything familiar begins to drift upward. You stand in the rain, but it doesn't fall. It rises, droplets pulled toward the sky, defying the rules written into nature. And in that quiet disobedience, something awakens. This is the reign of paradox, beauty in chaos, clarity in confusion. It reminds us that not all falling is failure, and not all rising is redemption. Sometimes the world must invert itself for us to see what we've forgotten. That order was never the truth, only the comfort. The upward rain feels impossible, yet you can almost imagine it. Streets shimmering in reverse, puddles reaching toward clouds, the laws of the world bending for a single brief miracle. It's not a fantasy. It's a metaphor for awakening, for the moment when despair becomes wonder, when loss becomes light. We are taught to see meaning in descent, in the inevitability of gravity. But what if healing is rebellion? What if rising doesn't mean escaping, but transforming the fall into ascent? The world doesn't always need new miracles. Sometimes it just needs a new direction. Rain that falls upward, grief that turns to grace, and a soul that finally learns that surrender can also mean flight. Fear has shape. It builds itself in angles, sharp corners of thought, tight corridors of uncertainty, rooms with no doors. Every city, every mind, constructs its own architecture of anxiety. You can feel it when you turn a corner at night, or when your phone vibrates in the dark, that invisible architecture tightening around you. The geometry of fear is precise. It doesn't shout. It encloses. It draws straight lines around freedom, measuring safety in square meters, calculating comfort through surveillance and distance. The modern world has perfected it. Glass walls for transparency, algorithms for control, smiles that hide exhaustion. It's the illusion of openness, built entirely on containment. Fear isn't always loud or violent. Sometimes it's efficient. It keeps you busy, productive, scrolling, compliant. It replaces the monster under the bed with the quiet panic of unread messages. It teaches you to fear stillness more than chaos, introspection more than exposure. But geometry works both ways. The same lines that cage can also guide. If you trace them backward, they lead you out. To unlearn fear is not to destroy the structure, but to walk through it consciously. To recognize that every angle, every shadow, is part of a larger pattern, one that can only trap you if you mistake it for the whole. Fear is design, and meaning is the moment you realize you were the architect all along. Dust is the memory of everything. It gathers quietly without permission in corners where life forgets to look. Each particle is history in miniature: skin, stone, pollen, ash, fragments of what once had shape, breath, purpose. It's the evidence of existence reduced to the smallest possible form of truth. We spend our lives fighting it, wiping, sweeping, purifying. as if the presence of dust is an insult to order. But dust is patient. It returns. It reclaims. It reminds us that nothing ever disappears. It only transforms. What we call decay, it calls reunion. In sunlight, dust becomes holy, floating between the seen and the unseen, weightless yet impossible to ignore. It drifts like thought, like faith, like the residue of meaning after words have failed. And in that shimmer, there's revelation. Permanence was never the point. Continuation was. We are all made of dust, though we pretend otherwise, walking monuments to impermanence. One day, the walls we built, the systems we worship, even the stories we told will settle into the same quiet powder. But maybe that's not loss. Maybe it's liberation, the moment when everything becomes one again. Dust doesn't mourn what it once was. It carries on, endlessly, silently, beautifully, the final poet of a world that never truly ends. This city was built on glass, walls that don't hide, windows that promise truth, reflections that insist on honesty. Everything is visible here, every step, every smile, every secret dressed in light. But visibility is not clarity. The city glitters, not because it's pure, but because it's skilled at deception. We live inside transparency now, streaming our days, confessing our thoughts, documenting our souls in high definition. But transparency can be the cruelest disguise. When everything is shown, nothing feels seen. When every truth is performed, authenticity becomes performance itself. The city of transparent lies runs on exposure. It sells confession as content, vulnerability as currency. It teaches us to polish our pain until it gleams, believable, marketable, safe. We are told this is honesty, but it's choreography. Behind every clear surface, something hides in plain sight. Fatigue, doubt, the quiet terror of being known only for what's shown. The lights never dim here. Even at night, the towers glow, a constant reminder that invisibility is now the only form of privacy left. The city doesn't demand your silence, it demands your participation. And maybe that's the final illusion, that transparency brings truth, when in reality, it only erases the shadows that make truth real. Every prayer now has a signal. It rises not through incense or breath, but through routers and screens, pixelated offerings to a God who no longer answers or maybe never spoke this language. We whisper into microphones, type into voids, send messages upward through invisible frequencies, hoping someone, or something, is listening. Once, faith required silence. Now it requires Wi-Fi. We refresh instead of repent. We seek presence through reception. Each notification feels divine for a moment, a small echo of connection in a world that no longer believes in miracles. But the silence afterward is longer, deeper, more infinite than before. Maybe God didn't go silent. Maybe we drowned him out, with our alerts, our opinions, our constant hunger to be heard. We replaced mystery with data, revelation with algorithms. And yet, even in this digital noise, we still reach out. Fingers hovering over glass, hearts aching through code. That impulse, raw and ancient, is faith in its purest form, the belief that meaning exists somewhere beyond the static. The screens glow like candles in a dark cathedral, and behind each one, a soul waits, not for proof, but for presence. Perhaps the silence is not absence at all. Perhaps it's the one thing left that still feels holy. There's a place, maybe in every city, maybe inside you, where time forgets to pass. The clocks still tick, but they no longer count. The air hangs heavy, thick with memory and stillness. It's the room where moments go when they refuse to die. You know it by feeling, not by sight. The light there doesn't change. It hovers, neither dawn nor dusk, an eternal in-between. Dust floats like suspended breath. Every sound enters softly, then dissolves, as if the walls have learned to absorb the noise of existence. It's the room you visit when you stop pretending to be fine. When the noise outside loses meaning, and your reflection looks back without expectation. In that silence, you confront everything you've postponed, the emotions paused mid-sentence, the thoughts that never found endings. Time doesn't move here because it's watching you. It's waiting to see if you'll keep running or finally sit still. Waiting to know if you'll treat this moment not as a prison, but as permission to feel without forward motion. And when you finally breathe, deeply, completely, the room exhales too. The dust begins to fall, the light shifts, and time, patient and unhurried, begins again, slower this time, as if it remembers you. The end of the world won't arrive with fire or thunder. It's already here, quiet, seamless, polite. A slow unraveling disguised as progress. The apocalypse came softly, wrapped in convenience, hidden in updates, smiling through glowing screens. There are no ruins to see, only routines. The cities still function. The trains still run. People still laugh, post, perform. But beneath it all, something essential has dimmed, the raw pulse of being alive. We've mistaken endurance for existence, efficiency for evolution. The collapse isn't external. It's emotional, spiritual, a quiet extinction of meaning. This is the apocalypse we chose, not destruction, but sedation. The kind that asks nothing of us but participation. The world didn't explode. It drifted, one notification at a time, one compromise after another, until we became fluent in emptiness. And yet, there's a strange tenderness in this ending. The world doesn't die screaming. It sighs. It fades with grace, leaving room for those who still remember how to feel. For the few who look up from the noise and see that the horizon hasn't disappeared, it's just waiting to be noticed again. The apocalypse isn't an event. It's a mirror. And the softest endings are the ones that give us one last chance to begin again. There comes a point when silence becomes unbearable, even for the dark. The shadows, once content to observe, begin to murmur. They rise along the walls, bend around your outline, and speak with your forgotten voice. Not the one you use for others, but the one you buried, the one that remembers everything you tried to erase. When shadows learn to speak, truth stops asking for permission. They don't accuse, they remind. They replay the moments you dismissed as trivial, the hesitation before goodbye, the kindness you never gave yourself, the dream you deemed impossible. Shadows hold no judgment, only memory. They exist because of light, but they belong to what it hides. We spend our lives running from darkness, not realizing it carries half of who we are. The fear, the grief, the hunger, all the emotions too heavy for daylight. They live there, waiting to be named. And when they finally speak, it isn't to haunt you. It's to free you. Because healing doesn't come from denying the shadow. It comes from listening to it, from realizing that light is meaningless without contrast, that silence is not the enemy of voice, but its foundation. When shadows learn to speak, the world stops pretending to be perfect. And maybe that's when it finally becomes real. Light always finds the fracture. It doesn't enter through perfection, but through imperfection. The split in the wall, the tear in the curtain, the wound that refuses to close. The cracks we spend our lives trying to hide are the same ones that allow illumination to touch us. When things break, they don't end, they open. And in that opening, the world changes shape. What once felt ruined begins to breathe. The light that leaks through isn't blinding, it's gentle. The kind that doesn't demand to be seen, only to remind you that you still are. We are taught to fear breaking, to equate strength with smoothness, resilience with silence. But the truth is quieter. Real strength doesn't mean never cracking. It means refusing to stay closed. It's the willingness to let the light in even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. The cracks are not flaws. They are the architecture of transformation. Through them, we rediscover tenderness. Through them, we remember humility. Through them, we realize that beauty has always belonged to what endures, not what survives untouched. So let the fractures remain. Let the light leak. Because healing isn't about returning to what was. It's about becoming luminous enough to no longer need the dark. In the end, it wasn't isolation that broke us. It was the illusion of it. All this time, we believed we were drifting apart, lost inside our private storms, disconnected by distance, by screens, by fear. But if you listen, truly listen, beneath the static, you'll hear it. The quiet pulse of others breathing beside you in the dark, the shared rhythm of survival, the proof that silence was never emptiness, only space between heartbeats. We mistook the stillness for separation. We thought the absence of words meant the absence of care. But silence has always been the deepest language, the one that carries grief, understanding, love, without needing sound. Every unspoken thought, every glance that lingered longer than comfort, every pause heavy with meaning, that was communion. That was us. The truth is, we were never alone. We were simply waiting for the noise to fade, for the lights to dim, for the world to quiet enough for us to hear each other again. Connection never left. It only learned to whisper. And now, standing in the ruins and reflections of what we've become, there is something almost holy in the realization that even in our silence, we were part of something vast, an invisible chorus of souls trying, hurting, enduring. We were never alone. We were just learning to listen.